welcome to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm your host, Edward Russell, and I'm joined this week by my co-host, Jay Shabat, to discuss Norwegian Air's deal for Wideroe and JetBlue's decision to end its alliance with American Airlines. Enjoy. Hey, Jay, how are you doing this July 4th week?
Good, Ned. How are you? How are things in Washington?
Trying to stay cool. For those who aren't in the U.S., it's been a very hot week. Actually, globally, I saw that it was the hottest week on average, hottest July 4th on average around the world. So it's we're definitely feeling the heat here in D.C. and just trying to stay cool.
Yeah, certainly out here in New Jersey as well.
Oh yeah. So it's a good reason that we're flying figuratively up to Norway, where Norwegian Air has announced a deal to buy regional Wideroe for about 105 million, in a deal that really makes them a much stronger competitive proposition against SAS, the leader in the Nordics.
This strikes me as a really smart deal, and one that strategically could potentially pay off big time for Norwegian. Norwegian was a carrier that really couldn't get out of its own way for many years. It was just recklessly ambitious. And I say that's almost being charitable. I mean, they were off starting airlines in Argentina, for crying out loud.
Flying 737 Maxes to Stuart, New York from, what was it, like Cork or something? It was
all sorts of
recklessly
wild network planning, excessive aircraft ordering, etc. And they went through bankruptcy during the pandemic, and everything they've really done since emerging from bankruptcy has been rather impressive. They're still they made decent money last summer. They still have that seasonal problem, which was something that Nordic Airlines and Northern Hemisphere or I should say airlines in very far north geographies.
I was going to say SAS also has a seasonal problem. You see that at exactly.
Air
airlines
Canada does.
Iceland Air.
Iceland Air does, correct. So Finnair. So that's something they're still dealing with. They did lose money in the first quarter of this year, but they're addressing that. And I think this Wideroe deal actually helps with seasonality, because Wideroe is going to provide a lot of new business traffic, and Wideroe is they have about 20% of the Norwegian market, and Norway actually punches above its weight in terms of its airline industry. It's it is a wealthy-ish economy. It has a lot of oil. That's the big industry there, and that's creates a lot of wealth that people can have, translates to disposable income that people can use for travel. And it's also a country that's very mountainous. It's has a lot of unforgiving geography, makes it difficult to travel over land. A lot of cities that are spread out across very long distances. Some of them, it's very far up north.
It's not a country with high-speed rail like other places in Europe, so you don't have a strong rail sector that can take domestic traffic.
So because ground transportation is difficult, it makes traveling by air all the more necessary. So Wideroe, this regional airline, flies mostly propeller planes. It's got 20% of that market, and a lot of that market is pretty high yield business travel. Some of it is government contracts. So Norwegian is going in, and traditionally a low cost carrier might shy away from something like that because it's adds complication, and it's creates a new fleet type, and
it adds complexity to a business that defines itself on being simple and streamlined, essentially.
Yes, but I think in this case it makes total sense, because there's only so much that simple business, there's only so far that simple business is going to take you in a very, very highly competitive European, airline market. And if they can, I was
going to say, and let's not forget, Norwegian Air CEO Geir Karlsson has said the airline wants to be the preferred carrier in the Nordic region, and to do that, they have to have more breadth than wherever they can fly their simple, streamlined business model. And so, to everything you said, Wideroe, they've said, will stay as a separate brand, which I think is a very prudent decision, given Wideroe name has 90 years of history in Norway and is widely regarded, and it'll be a separate business, so they can focus on the low-cost airline as one business segment, completely separate from the regional, and the regional will almost by definition have higher costs. But what I see here is they're betting that the revenue lift from Wideroe will more than outweigh the additional costs to the business.
Yep, and it all seems very smart to me. And on top of all this, it does put additional pressure onto SAS, which is in bankruptcy right now, trying to restructure, and frankly, not doing a very good job of getting its profits up. I mean, it's their last quarterly results pretty lousy, and they remember Norwegian went into bankruptcy very early on in the pandemic when the aircraft market was very depressed. So they can go into they could basically call up their lessors and say, hey, give us a better deal. And the lessors really had not too much choice. They either gave them a better deal or took back an aircraft that wasn't going to find any new homes during the middle of a global pandemic. Now it's much more difficult. SAS is trying to do that same sort of aircraft restructuring at a time when aircraft are an extremely hot, it's an extremely hot demand. So
we see airlines, like Indigo's order was for deliveries from 2030, where, airlines are ordering planes 7 years out right now because there aren't delivery slots. It is growth, but they're basically securing delivery slots years in the future because planes are in such short supply. Sorry, I go off on a tangent there.
No, you're making good points there. And it's, all that you can imagine what that conversation sounds like. SAS picks up the phone, calls a lessor, say, hey, if you don't give us a better deal, we're going to walk away from this lease. You're going to have to take the plane back. And the lessor replies, sure, we'll take it. We can find a new home for that probably in 24 hours. In this kind of market. So that's making it difficult for SAS. They have done some restructuring deals. I think they're making, I don't want to minimize the efforts that they've made some progress, but very, very tough market for them. And we won't go too much into SAS's business model, but it is a very it's almost inherently dysfunctional. Their network is split across 3 subscale hubs, and we may have talked about that in previous podcasts, but I think Norwegian is in a very nice position where they could potentially become the sort of the king of the Nordics. And a few other things to remember here is so Ryanair, EasyJet, never really that big in the Nordic region. They do have routes, but they've always prioritized, let's go to Italy and beat up on Alitalia. Let's go to Spain and grab all that leisure travel.
Well, and for good reason. If you think about, I looked at the Nordics, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden have 22 million people combined. Admittedly, it's 22 million high income, relatively high income countries, but Italy, the population of Italy alone is, 59 million. Spain is up there as well. Like, if you're a discounter and you want to go grab a massive market, you aren't going to go to the Nordics. You're going to go to a country that has, it's Spain, 47 million. These massive markets that are also extremely popular with Europeans around the continent. And we saw that Ryanair pulled back from their own. Did they launch domestic Sweden operations? They pulled back last year, or
yeah, it sounds familiar. I think they've tried. I think over the years these carriers have gone in and out of these markets. But they've never Ryanair and EasyJet, Wizz Air. Wizz Air was once very early on. They were big in Norway. A lot of things. There's a lot of Eastern European migrants that maybe work in the Nordics, and they were trying to cater that market. I think they had a base in Oslo for a while, but I don't believe they do much of that anymore. It's the action for these European low cost carriers tends to be in Southern Europe or flying from the big origin markets like London, Rome, whatnot. But yeah, back to Wideroe. Now, of course, this Wideroe deal, we don't know for sure that it's going to be approved by the regulators. I don't imagine that there'll be a huge problem, but you never know.
You never know. That's right.
Yeah, you never know with regulators. Some of that's dependent on politics. Unions can get involved in that discussion. So we don't know. But if it does go through, to me, it looks like a very smart move for Norwegian. And not only, by the way, do they diversify their business into, you're getting more corporate travel, which helps with seasonality because corporate travel tends to be, leisure travel tends to be more seasonal than corporate.
Yes.
But at the same time, the other big benefit here is that Wideroe makes your frequent flyer plan more valuable. And Wideroe actually cooperates with SAS. Widerøe actually used to be owned by SAS, and
Yeah,
they sold it off.
2013. 2013 SAS sold them off. Yep.
Yep, sold them off, and they still are part of the SAS Euro bonus program. And you wonder if that's changed. Now they'll be aligned with the Norwegian loyalty program, and that could put another, axe into into SAS's heart and see if they can survive that blow as well. But
well, and we know, speaking of loyalty, I mean, we know that Norwegian, they've already said that investing in their loyalty program is a big part of their effort to capture more corporate travelers. And they've unveiled new tiers for Norwegian rewards, and just a few weeks ago they unveiled a new partnership with Strawberry, a hotel ownership chain in Norway or the Nordics. So, Norwegian is definitely investing a lot in their loyalty program and see that as a big differentiator versus SAS. Of course, the one thing Norwegian doesn't have is a global alliance partnership. So, but that's not to say that's not coming.
You wonder, is that next? Yeah, no, speaking of loyalty, we should put a plug out for Skift. Our colleague Asab Rizvi just published a new report on airline loyalty programs, so go check that out. They are very, very, very important and valuable, so you can see why Norwegian would want to build that up, and I think Widerøe helps a lot in that regard.
So Jay, I have one question before we leave Norwegian and Widerøe alone. Do you think Norwegian could be gunning to buy SAS, or at least what's left of them, out of bankruptcy?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question. So yeah, SAS seems to me like their only escape hatch is through some kind of sale to another airline. There haven't seemed to be any airlines that have come along. The obvious ones were Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, IAG. They don't seem to be too interested. So perhaps Norwegian is getting to, you wouldn't, if we were having this conversation a year ago, we'd say, well, no, there's no way Norwegian has the muscle to do that. They just got out of bankruptcy. They've got to, but as they kind of get on sure footing, you could see them getting into a position. I mean, obviously they're in a position now where they feel comfortable making this Widerøe acquisition. So at some point, I think it's a very plausible scenario. And perhaps, I wouldn't be surprised if there have been phone conversations already, Norwegian CEO calling up SAS CEO, hey, let's talk, kind of thing. And they could be talking as we speak, because that would, it logically just makes a lot of sense. You create a Nordic champion, one large airline for the whole region. A lot of, whenever it comes to mergers, acquisitions, there's a lot of potential barriers, but I think it's a possibility.
Yeah. No, I do too. All the reasons that you just mentioned, Jay.
Yeah, that's logical. It makes sense.
Yeah. There's definitely some barriers, not least the state ownerships by Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and SAS. Mm-hmm. And of course, SAS has strong labor unions, but hey, that's what bankruptcy helps with. The Chapter 11 process makes acquisitions much easier than they otherwise are. So
that's the time to do it. Yep. If you want to buy an airline, you want to do it in bankruptcy, because you have the flexibility to jigger around with your contracts, and just much, much more flexibility there. Now, does Norwegian want to digest that unwieldy network? I don't know. Do they really want those 3 hubs, and do they want A330s and A350s? And, maybe not. But,
exactly. There's a lot of there are issues with that. Maybe Norwegian just sees the opportunity to continue growing as it is, and SAS withers. Who knows? But
that could ultimately be the best situation for Norwegian if SAS just dies. And I don't mean to write the obituary just yet. I'm not. So, but there is, it's not looking very, very promising for SAS's future. So that may be, Norwegian's best play here. Maybe just, just wait and see if it dies.
Exactly. With that, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about the latest in the JetBlue, American Airlines, Spirit Airlines merger alliance saga. And we're back. As promised, we are back in the U.S., heading to the Northeast this time. And the news this week, late on Wednesday, July 5th, was that JetBlue will not appeal a judge's ruling that it must end its alliance with American and is beginning to unwind the partnership that has actually seen both airlines grow significantly in the Northeast. Jay, thoughts?
Yeah, and I haven't. I saw this news broke yesterday, right? Was it yesterday that
It
came out?
was
By the way,
after markets closed on the 5th, so yeah, it's very new.
yeah, very new. And yeah, just so we should always say that we're speaking now on Thursday afternoon, July 6th. So yeah, I haven't seen JetBlue's statement. Obviously, they feel that either it's not worth the time and the money and the effort to fight this, or they just think they have a losing case and they're kind of resigned to just, okay, let's focus on the Spirit takeover. That's where the real, that's where our real priority is.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
It's interesting because one of the curious things is American Airlines came out right after JetBlue and said they actually intend to continue with their appeal of the judge's ruling in that case. And that sort of surprised me a little bit because, they acknowledge that they are working with JetBlue to unwind the alliance, and there is a procedure for that laid out in their alliance agreement. So that's underway. But, I've been trying to think about what American gains by continuing with their appeal. And, the best guess I have is if they can win their appeal, they could form a similar alliance in the future with another airline, but it's not going to be with JetBlue because clearly JetBlue, if they get Spirit, it's going to be a lot. I don't know. It's a curious move on American's part. I'm sure there are good legal reasons that I'm not thinking of at the moment, though.
Yeah, that's possible. And again, I'm just totally speculating here because I haven't seen, like I said, I didn't read the reasoning here. But I mean, unless JetBlue's thinking, okay, let American do the legal work. If they do, if they do wind up winning that case, and then they can go back and regroup and continue to do something with American. Maybe they just want to allocate all of their legal resources right now on their own legal resources on this.
You remind me in the judge's ruling in May, what he mentioned that the American Airlines Alaska Airlines code share, which is not alliance, they don't have revenue sharing and coordination as American and JetBlue did. That is legal under antitrust law. So maybe American wants to do something like that with JetBlue after this merger goes through, form a code share with JetBlue, where they aren't coordinating and they aren't leasing slots back and forth at some of the major New York airports and stuff. That right, definitely could be on the table.
More of an Alaska type arrangement like they have with Alaska. Yeah, that could be. I think
exactly.
We'll see how it all plays out. Yeah, and I guess do we have a date for the trial on Spirit JetBlue? Is that
it's
October?
In October? I forget the exact day, and I'm going to be watching that closely because when the DOJ came out and sued to block the merger, I went to a press conference and they said, it was asked that if the NEA was gone, would they approve the merger? And they said no. They still thought that it was anti-competitive and that they would block it even without the NEA. I mean, the NEA is a concern, but it's interesting. The lawsuit definitely focused on the elimination of a competitor from the marketplace, i.e. Spirit would be eliminated by JetBlue merging with them. And that is a lot of what the judge talked about in the American JetBlue ruling, is that by coordinating, the airlines basically removed a competitor from the market. So I see parallels. I don't know if this really helps JetBlue in the case, in the DOJ's case against Spirit. I would tend to think that it might a little, but I think they're still going to have some high hurdles to fight in court to get their merger through.
Yeah, I mean, the DOJ will certainly fight aggressively, unless a lot of these cases end in an out of court settlement before it actually goes to trial. I believe that's what happened with the U.S. Airways American merger back in 2013 or whatever it was.
But we have a very different Justice Department today than we did in 2013. And it does make me wonder, and this Justice Department seems much more willing to go to court, especially now that they have an example of going to court and winning. So that might give them more reason to let it go to trial rather than accept the settlement. I don't know.
Yeah, it is very aggressive. The 2013 Justice Department was they had I remember there's a guy who was named William Bear. I can't remember. He was rather aggressive too in the Obama administration, in terms of antitrust policy, and I think they just got enough concessions from the two airlines where they're like, wait, we're going to let it happen, but you got to give up this, give up that. And I think you're right that it's even more aggressive today. I think there's this kind of sense that within the administration and among many economists that a lot of industries have become over consolidated. So there's that philosophical angle. So maybe they won't settle. Who knows? But we'll probably get an answer before too long, because here we are in the summer and the trial's just a couple months away.
Oh, absolutely. I think we'll know if they're going to settle or if they go to court within. Yeah, it's like you said, it's only a few short months away, scarily, considering everything, how quickly time flies. But yeah, we'll find out. But it's an interesting move. I'm also curious on how the unwinding goes, because if you recall, JetBlue is leased, I want to say over 100 slots from American at JFK and LaGuardia. Those will have to go back to American unless they reach new agreement for JetBlue to pay American for those slots. They divested slots at Washington National, which were awarded to Southwest just recently. I mean, those slots are going to come back, so Southwest is going to have to cancel some flights. I mean, none of this is expected to happen in the summer before Labor Day, which is the symbolic end of the summer in the U.S. But I mean, it's probably all going to happen before the end of the year, especially because the judge in the case has said he expects the unwinding to happen in less than 90 days. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a related question. I mean, if you think about from Americans' perspective, they've tailored a lot of their Eastern network strategy under the assumption that this JetBlue venture was going to be ongoing. And one of the things they've done is downscale Philadelphia a lot, because a lot of that traffic was pumped through New York, where JetBlue could offer them more help. But now that this JetBlue thing, assuming it does go away forever, do they, light a fire under Philadelphia again and start growing that? It's hard to say, but it's just another goes to your question of, what are the implications of this unraveling?
Yep. I mean, and those are all things that we're going to have to watch and see in the coming months as this comes, moves forward. But like I said, the timeline I think is going to be fairly aggressive, so we're going to see it play out very, in short order. But travelers, don't fear. Your flights for Labor Day will likely be unaffected. Fall travel, different story though.
Yeah, it could be a different industry come the fall. We may have one fewer airline, and we'll see what that does for fares and whatnot. But,
we'll see.
I'll have the popcorn ready.
You and I both. With that, we'll leave it there. Listeners, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can reach me at er@skift.com. You can reach out to Jay at js@skift.com. Jay, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise, Ned, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Airline Weekly Lounge podcast. Check out airlineweekly.com for a new issue every Monday and updates on the latest airline news throughout the week.